join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today.
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Good evening, you're with GB News. In a moment, headliners. But first, let's bring you the latest news headlines. And tonight, the former Home Secretary has warned there's a culture of collusion in order to target Boris Johnson. Speaking exclusively to GB News, Priti Patel questioned the fairness in approach of some MPs investigating claims that the former Prime Minister misled Parliament over lockdown parties. She also spoke of her concerns that civil servant Sue Gray, who reported on events at Number 10, has now been hired to work for the Labour Party. Ms Patel says it's putting our democracy in a very bad light.
So I think there has to be some serious questions asked about all of this. And Dan, you also followed in recent weeks, the issues around Keir Starmer, Sue Gray, all these types of things. They're not happening in isolation. I use the word collusion. You've just used the other word as well, and corruption. I think there is a culture of collusion, quite frankly.
Well, in some breaking news that we've heard this evening, it's been confirmed that Boris Johnson will fight the next election in his Uxbridge and South Ruislip constituency. The former Prime Minister was reselected despite speculation he may seek a safer seat. Although he holds a 7,000 vote majority, his seat is seen as a Labour target at the next election. Well, the other big news today is that health unions have finally agreed a pay offer with the government and will put it to a vote with nurses, ambulance staff and other NHS workers in England, deciding whether to accept it or not next week. The offer proposes a consolidated pay increase of 5% and an additional lump sum worth at least £1,655. Health unions have now suspended all planned strikes and are recommending that their members accept the deal in the upcoming ballot. And that comes as health workers in Scotland, represented by the GMB union, accepted a 6.5% pay offer from the Scottish Government. The Prime Minister said today the agreement is a message to other unions to stop the strikes and start talks.
We want to have constructive dialogue with unions. We're serious about finding fair and reasonable agreements on public sector pay. I think today's agreement demonstrates that. And what I'd say to all other unions is, please don't be striking. Please come in and have those talks. We've been wanting to do that. And today's agreement demonstrates we're serious about it. We don't want disruption.
And separately, junior doctors belonging to the British Medical Association are yet to resolve their pay dispute. However, they've welcomed an invitation to negotiate from the government, with talks set to take place tomorrow. Full coverage right here, GB News. Now it's time for headliners.
Hello, I'm Andrew Doyle and welcome to Headliners. And joining me tonight to take you through Friday's top news stories are two Headliners heavyweights. We've got Leo Kearse and Steve N. Allen. How are you both? You good? Happy?
Good, thanks.
You're always happy though, Leo, aren't you?
I'm not always happy.
No, but
some days I'm sad.
You are, but you pretend to be happy. You're very professional like
Got
that.
a bit of brave face.
You do, don't you, in spite of the misery of existence. What about you, Steve?
I mean, always sad, actually. Always the hole that is where my soul should be is yet to be filled by life.
Well, what a positive start to the show. But let's have a look at the front pages of Friday's newspapers to cheer us up. And we've got the Daily Mail first. They're running with this: beyond parody. Apparently Oxfam's new inclusivity guide has banned words such as mother and headquarters. We're going to get to that in a minute. The Guardian has excoriating report condemns Met Police over racist and sexist culture. The Telegraph is leading with Labour's pension tax raid plan will hit millions. The Times: unions back fair raise for 1 million NHS staff. And the Daily Express are leading with victory for common sense and patience. And now we've got the Daily Star, and they're going with Generation Z. It's sleepy time. You'll find out what that's about when we get to it in a moment. Those were your front pages. OK, we're going to begin with the Daily Mail, the biggest story of the day, Leo.
So, I don't know if it's the biggest story, but it's certainly the most Daily Mail story. It's fantastic. So Oxfam, the charity, have brought out a new 92-page inclusivity guide telling their staff, how to use the language. Because, of course, if you're doing a job, the most important thing is reading a 92-page guide that redefines the common use of words.
But apparently this was circulated internally for a long, long time. It's just been made public.
Oh, right.
That's what's happened. But it's pretty mad, isn't
Some
it?
of this stuff, I'd love to read the whole thing, but just the excerpts that they've got here. A lot of people are focusing on the fact that mother and father, people are being told to replace that with the term parent. that kind of makes sense.
Does
but
it?
Other terms... Well, yeah, but I can understand that. Sometimes, I don't understand it, but it's not, for me, it's not the worst thing. So the term pregnant women or people who become pregnant should be used instead of expectant mothers.
Okay.
In case, there's a man out there who's going to squeeze a child through his testes, there's instead of saying migration crisis or refugee crisis, which are terms that I'd have thought are used a lot by Oxfam, we've got to say migration as a complex phenomenon. Like it's some sort of... Are we talking about starlings here?
So the thing about all of this, Steve, is, this is a very Western obsession, this idea of let's sort of curtail speech along these weirdly middle-class ideological lines. People in the developing countries aren't going to care about this stuff, or probably even understand it, are they?
Yeah, very few people care about it. The only people who care about it are the kind of people who write 92-page guides on things.
Sure.
That's the problem. I think the aim of being inclusive is great, which is why I can kind of see the sense of saying parent as a general, because you don't really know who's in charge. I remember in the 80s...
You don't know who the parents are these days.
These days, yeah. You're
so conservative, Steve.
No, but I remember in the 80s, there was a move to not say mum and dad in case it was other guardians or something. There's an argument.
It didn't catch on, did it?
And that's not why they're doing it. But there are better things in this report, in this guide, including on race. This is the best thing I've ever read. The guidebook states that minority ethnic person should be used instead of ethnic minority person because it places the emphasis on ethnicity being a minority. Even if that's a good argument, your version does the same, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You've just swapped the words round.
Yeah. And in fact, the current correct term for ethnic minority people is global majority, because, of course, across the globe, they're a majority, and it's white people who are a minority.
Oh, no, but the critical race theorists won't like that, because they sort of depend on the victimhood idea. If you're suddenly the majority, that doesn't work anymore.
Well, I guess you can still be victimised by a small amount. Some of the things, so the word headquarters should never be used because it implies a power dynamic that prioritises one office over another. In the context in which we work, the implication is very colonial, reinforcing hierarchical power issues and a top-down approach. Aren't all organisations to a certain extent hierarchical? Oxfam's not a completely flat organisation.
I think they're stretching things a little bit. I don't think that's convincing. But there's all sorts of things, and I would question the idea that it's inclusive, because they're encouraging people to use phrases like cis, womexen, woman with an X in it as well. Now, these are specifically ideological ideas, and most people don't agree with them. And the staff members, one staff member's already said they're terrified for their jobs because if they speak out against this nonsense, they might get in trouble. So it's not inclusive, it's the opposite. It's actually excluding most of their workforce.
It's inclusive to the right people, to the chosen people.
Right, OK.
Excluding... It's like the other day we saw a girls' school sports team was banned from a tournament because they refused to play against the trans team. And they said, we're doing this because of inclusivity. And it's like, you excluded those girls. That's not being inclusive. It's the same thing here. A lot of people will find this very
selective.
Othering.
Yeah, very selective idea of what inclusivity means. Anyway, we're going to move on to the Telegraph now, Steve. What are they leading with on Friday?
The Telegraph goes with a story about pensions. But this is actually, I find this confusing. This is Labour's point of view about reversing what Jeremy Hunt has said he'll be doing about pensions could cause problems.
Yes.
I needed a flow diagram to kind of get my head around this. So Jeremy Hunt tries to get rid of a cap on how much you can accumulate for your pension. Rachel Reeves said, oh, we'll get rid of that. The Telegraph then goes on to, this is going to cause panic. But there's so many ifs in this sentence. If Labour get in, if they actually change it, if people do then decide to take early retirement before Labour get in.
Yes.
And then if you read down into the details of it, one argument is that this will impact the top 1%. So maybe 1% of the potential workforce won't go back to work. I think we're down to about 3 people.
Explain why it's a front cover story then.
Well, these are the people who are the most productive people in society, the top 1%. They get paid the most because they do the most good for society.
They don't necessarily do the most work, of course.
Well, whatever they do is generating a lot of wealth. You generally don't pay someone a lot of money to do nothing. So they're generating a lot of wealth and a lot of tax. So to keep those people working is good for the country.
Okay.
But do you think those people will stop work simply because their pension would then be taxed above a certain level? If they're making that much, of that 1%, the top bit of that 1% will be making so much the tax won't slow them down. There'll be a small slice just over that boundary when they might think of not going back to work.
Absolutely. It's going to disincentivise people, the top earners. And we're talking about doctors. You know, this is people who we really want in the workforce. It'll be disincentivised to work. I mean, you can say, oh, but they'll still want to keep working because it's a vocation. But no, if you're going to be working essentially for free because any money you work it gets chopped off by the cap, then there's no point doing it.
Okay, well let's move on now to the Times, the front cover of Friday's Times. Leo, what are the Times leading with?
So unions have backed a fair raise for 1 million NHS staff. It's only 5%. They were going for 14%. So they've settled for 5% and a lot more claps. I think we're going to have to clap on Tuesdays and Thursdays now. So I'll maybe bang some frying pans together. Which actually, I went through so many frying pans in the pandemic. Now I'm in hospital every 2 weeks, not with coronavirus, just with burnt hands from trying to flip a pan.
Yeah, that's why they call it a pandemic.
Hey.
Very good. Thank you. Very good. Any thoughts on this story, Steve?
Yeah, why did it take this long? We sat here saying, of all those stories that were saying, there'll be no negotiation, we're not doing any negotiation. Well, of course there'll be negotiation at some point. And if they would have done this, we would have had fewer days with medical people on strike. So, you know, maybe some people would have lived.
OK, well, we're going to finish this section with the Daily Star. As ever, Steve, the Star finds a different angle on the day's events. What have they gone with?
Young people are having naps.
Now, this is under front page news, ladies and gentlemen.
And it says under 24s are having naps. Now, my kid's 1 and he naps twice a day, so he's skewing figures.
Yeah.
He's under 24.
Yeah.
But it's just saying that old people, maybe they don't nap as much as young people because they get tired. I'd love to be angry about this, but I also nap at any given opportunity. So
Yes,
I know more.
you're not typical necessarily, but I would say that we have always known that the people who nap the most are the very, very old and the very, very young. Teenagers spend most of their time napping, don't they? I mean, that's what I did.
I think this is a story that was concocted because Generation Z could create... you just make more Zs.
And it's a funny headline.
It's a funny headline. There you go. There's your pun.
And that's the only reason they reported on it.
Yeah.
I still don't think it sort of justifies a front-page coverage, if I'm honest.
Well, maybe not in the Financial Times, but this is the Daily Star, so...
And that's all that's been said in this article, effectively. Yeah. What a waste of everyone's time. Anyway, that's the front pages covered. But coming up after the break, Britain life expectancy is decreasing, truancy is on the increase, and President Macron goes all tyrannical. What a surprise. See you in 2 minutes.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB+ radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit off.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
And welcome back to Headliners with me, Andrew Doyle. It's the first look at Friday's newspapers. I'm here with Leo Kearse and Steve N. Allen. And onto this story now. The US has released footage of the Russian drone collision from the other day. Very exciting. Let's take a look. And there we see the images from the drone and the Russian plane. Very reckless is how it has been described. And there's the collision right there. With the
dumping a chemtrail.
It's certainly doing something.
Live footage.
So
you see the propeller stopped. The propeller got bent. Apparently, they're not sure if the propeller hit the fuselage of the other plane, or if it just hitting the fuel would at that speed would.
Yeah, and but apparently the Russian plane was sort of dumping fuel.
Yeah.
Which is apparently classed as a kind of harassment. They called it harassment.
Yeah. I mean, it's like chucking. It's like if you're driving, if you've got road rage and you want to chuck, a can at another car.
Is that what it is?
If you're in a MiG, if you're in one of these fighter jets, you can't wind down the window. They don't have those little handles for winding down the window.
Steve, what are the Russians playing at? Right, so this feels quite antagonistic, doesn't it?
It does. I'll tell you what they're playing at. They're playing it trying to get their news and their clips mention loads. We've just fallen into the trap. I mean, it's a great clip.
Yes.
We're doing exactly what they want.
Ah, you think this is a propaganda thing?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not even sure if dumping fuel on a drone makes that much difference. It just looks like a dirty protest, doesn't it? It looks...
It's going to annoy Greta, that's for sure.
Yeah, she'll be really angry about
this. This is brinkmanship because, I mean, just a few days ago, the US flew B-52 bombers over Estonia and, just veered away from the Russian border at the last moment.
Right.
In a sort of practice run in St. Petersburg. So this is probably in response to that. And also, they're trying to force the drone down. Russia thinks it's going to be able to recover the drone because Russia's drone technology is terrible. They want to get this drone, but the drone, pick it apart. They want to find out how they can blow up weddings in Afghanistan.
But the drone, the drone fell in international waters, in neutral waters, right? So the US will be able to get it back.
Well, it's the Black Sea, so I'm not sure. I mean, the Russian Navy's right there, so they might have already recovered.
But no one's making claims that the drone shouldn't be there, right? There's nothing wrong with the drone being where it was. It's not like the Chinese balloon thing all over again, is it? No, it's not the same thing. But it does feel like brinkmanship. It feels a bit worrying. Yeah. It feels like something's escalating.
Yeah. It does.
Oh, well, on to World War III. But first, what about this one from the Friday's Times on how ill we all are, Steve?
I'd reframe it. Good news. We're solving the ageing population crisis.
Goodness.
I'm bringing the good stuff. Britain slips to the 29th in the global life expectancy ratings.
That doesn't sound good, though, does it? Because apparently back in the 1950s, we were 7th place in the world. and now we're 29th. What's going wrong?
Well, it turns out wealth inequalities. You'd imagine it would be all the bad food, but no, it's the fact that the wealth inequality means the poorest are dying younger, and they're just dragging down your stats. So if you want to improve this, you've got to help out poor people.
Well, but maybe when we get Scotland gets independence, we'll go right up again.
Well, actually, you've got a fair point. I was going to criticise. I mean, England can hardly talk. You're full of obese drug addicts as well. But Scotland is particularly bad. Our drug deaths under the SNP have gone up, I think, threefold. It's like by far the highest in Europe. Like, you know, a multitude higher than the next highest country. But when we're talking about inequality, the actual issue for Britain is that other countries, the inequality between Britain and other countries has decreased. So other countries are coming up to a Western, you know, modern...
No, but they're accelerating, Leo, because from the look of this article, it's sort of saying that we've basically stayed the same and all these other developed countries have sort of zoomed ahead. Why haven't we? And it is probably just poverty, isn't it? We probably just need to deal with the fact that we've got too much poverty.
Poverty and also the pandemic. So we've got a huge number of unexplained excess deaths that definitely didn't happen because of that reason you think they happened. We don't want to get an Ofcom strike. But there's a huge number of excess deaths. I don't know if...
Well, it might have something to do with the NHS and the NHS being underfunded and not being able to deal with...
But every Western country, like Germany, France, everybody's got a crisis with their healthcare system at the moment. So I don't think there's anything particular to that. I think, you know, the fact that we locked down so much... Sweden doesn't have those excess deaths.
Can I just say on this? We're still beating America, so America, please keep eating the Twinkies and having guns.
There we go. Good job, America. Anyway, more great British achievements in Friday's Guardian. Leo, you've got this one, I believe.
So 1 in 5 pupils in England were persistently absent in the past school year. So this is, this is an overhang from lockdown when obviously kids didn't go to school. And it's the same as, you know, we're seeing people missing from the workplace because they didn't go to work and now they don't want to go back to work. Kids don't want to go back to school. A Department for Education spokesperson said that the vast majority of children were in school and learning. They need to learn statistics and context.
Right.
80%, I mean, it might be the vast majority in certain situations, but if you're talking about kids going to school, that's not a vast majority.
No, look,
that's not enough.
Vast majority of children in school is the bare minimum I would expect, basically. I mean, if you're looking at these stats, like 22% of state school pupils missing for more than 10% of their lessons.
Yeah.
Now, I used to be a teacher, and I know that when people miss, like, just a few days, it's quite a slog to get them back on track. Yeah. This is not good.
But we're managing to solve the problem of class sizes being too big.
There is that.
By making sure that they're not at school. And also, while I'm trying to find the silver lining, give it a couple of years and this whole cohort will be in the job market competing with us as we get older. So it's really good that they're not as clever.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah, otherwise we're going to struggle for work.
That is a very good point. I do worry about this, though. I mean, I kind of think, is Leo's diagnosis right? Is this because of the pandemic and kids got just used to not being at school and they thought, actually, maybe we don't need to be there?
It's got to be a big part of it. They shouldn't have to be there. It's entirely possible to have a pandemic, have a response to a pandemic and realise you are meant to be back at school. Yeah. Someone's dropped another spanner.
I mean, we probably shouldn't have shut all those schools, let's face it.
Well, yeah, and I think every generation, about 20%, probably more than that, of the kids are just too stupid for school to be any good for them. So maybe it's just nature's way.
Yeah, bring back chimney sweeping for some of them. They don't need to be literate. What's going on there? Anyway, what about this article from Friday's Mirror on the perils of installing Chinese spyware, no matter how good the choreography is? TikTok, Steve, what's going on?
Yeah, they're banning it for the phones of the ministers and officials working in government on their work phones.
Right.
Because, yeah, you shouldn't be lip-syncing when you're at work. They're still allowed it on their personal phones, which I guess is good. Otherwise, we might have been deprived of Nadine Dorries rapping, which is still...
Oh, I missed that. She should do a follow-up.
Yeah.
She should release a single, that woman.
Or a whole album.
She's pretty ghetto. This is interesting, though, like TikTok. I mean, my understanding is that because Chinese companies are obliged to hand over data to the Chinese government, should that be requested, and the parent company of TikTok, which I think is called ByteDance or something like that.
Yeah.
Basically, it is a huge security risk, isn't it, Leo? And there's no real doubt about that.
Yeah, and America's already looking to ban TikTok outright or force its sale to an American company, the American subsidiary of this Chinese company. Because it's not just a security risk in terms of them harvesting data from your phone, which is obviously an issue with government ministers and anybody involved in the government, but it also, the sort of things that TikTok in the West pushes through its algorithm is all this really degenerate, encouraging children to transition, encouraging self-harm.
Is that the case, or is that just because we see the worst of it? Because I'm not on TikTok, so what I see is the libs of TikTok account on Twitter.
It's all like.
Is it all like that?
That's probably about the best you're going to.
Are you serious?
It's all just degenerate idiocy. It's like 20% of kids who aren't in school.
I have to let Steve come back on this.
It's not all like that. I think it's got an algorithm that learns what you're interested in. If you watch one of their videos for over a certain amount of time, it just feeds you a load of those. And I think you might have been shown a video that really set off your anger,
Leo,
and it's realised you love all
Leo is into degeneracy, and you just won't admit it.
I don't go on TikTok. I just think it's.
Well, then how do you know what TikTok's full of?
Because I can see it on Twitter. People post the best stuff on Twitter.
To come back to this article, it is right and proper that the government and government ministers should not be using TikTok on their phones. There's obviously some potential security breach there, right? There's obviously a problem.
Yeah, I mean, there's no actual evidence that there's something in the code that then can get other data from your phone.
Well.
But it's what's the phrase? Cost risk analysis.
Well, exactly.
Risk benefit analysis.
We've seen what the spyware can do. We've seen what that Pegasus spyware can do. You know, just having the software on your phone gives them access to absolutely everything. We don't know, so let's just play it safe, right? Ministers get off TikTok, and by the way, get off WhatsApp. Because all of that stuff gets leaked eventually. You know, so that's for their own good. That'd be my advice.
They shouldn't be using WhatsApp anyway, because you can't freedom of information it. I mean, you can, but you don't know what to freedom of information
You can't go through Isabel Oakeshott.
That's the way it's done. Anyway, we're going to move on now to this article. This is in Friday's Daily Mail, and this is on President Macron making incredibly popular and democratic decisions. This is what he's like, though, isn't he, Leo? You know, this is it.
So French President Macron faces motions of no confidence after forcing through an increase in retirement age without a vote in Parliament. So they're predicting riots, and obviously Macron doesn't care about it because he's still about 16 years old. But in France, they're raising the retirement age from 62 to 64. Just to put this in context, in Britain, the retirement age is 66 to 68, and I think our life expectancy is about 57 at the moment. So, yeah, we're just working till we die. But this it's interesting. We're seeing this across Europe. You know, we're seeing governments, forced through quite sort of authoritarianly forced through rules. You know, without going to Parliament, without a vote, without a referendum, and then people rise up. We saw the Dutch elections. They elected this populist farmers party, and it's now the major.
So this seems to be a no-brainer for me. Like, if you're in charge and you see that polling suggests that 2/3 of the electorate hate what you're about to do, and you don't have approval within your parliament, why push it through anyway? It's going to backfire. That's what it happened with Nicola Sturgeon and the gender recognition bill. Like, 2/3 of Scottish voters didn't want it. You know, what's he thinking, Steve?
Well, I mean, I can understand that we do need retirement ages to go up because life expectancy has gone up. Originally, when retirement was brought in, people lived for like 3 years after the age, and now you can live for decades beyond. But you're right about the method of doing it. Like, go to the vote, lose the vote, and then it's not your fault. I can see how he thinks that's the right thing to do.
Yeah, but this is the point, isn't it? You know, he doesn't have a majority in the country. He doesn't have a majority in the National Assembly. His moral responsibility is to withdraw the bill, not just, railroad it through and hope it's OK. Did he learn nothing from the Gilets jaunes and what happened?
But surely sometimes there's an argument to be made that, what people want isn't the best thing for the country.
That's true, but then
nobody wants to work an extra 2 years.
No, but then you win the argument. That's how democracy works. I mean, you're absolutely right that the majority can sometimes be thick and wrong. I completely agree with that, but that's why you've got, as a politician, it's your job to convey the arguments properly so that you get the result that is best for everyone.
You're never going to be able to phrase that argument in a way that's going to convince people that vote to retire 2 years.
You have no faith in humanity and our ability to reason. I don't know. I think this is undemocratic. I don't think it's good for Macron, and I think he's going to face, because the French are pretty good at their protests. They go out on the street. They don't mess about.
Oh yeah, you feel sorry for the lambs.
Set fire at trucks.
They did set fire to lambs, didn't they? Why did they do that again?
It smells nice. That barbecue.
Honestly, French cuisine. People rave about it, but it's just ghastly. Anyway, that's all for this part, by the way. So we're going to take a quick break. Do not go anywhere, because these two are going to be talking about the world's first octopus farm, special BBC arrangements, and Steve will tell us why we shouldn't fret about missing radioactive components, hopefully. See you in a minute.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know, Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Welcome back to Headliners, your first look at Friday's newspapers. And as you all know, I'm an incredible Strictly Come Dancing fan, so it does sadden me to read that one of the judges would not be able to understand Northerners. Steve, are you personally offended by this?
I'm deep on behalf of my people, as I am from the north. I've lost some of the accent, I'll admit that, but that's because it turns out people like Strictly Judge Motsi Mabuse, never watch it, says that she can't understand Northerners.
It's very honest of her to say this, that she just can't grasp. She has to get a translation from one of the other judges, apparently.
Yeah. Which I'm impressed by, to be fair. It's Craig Revel Horwood. I'm amazed that he can understand Northerners as well. Isn't he Australian originally or something?
I have no idea who any of these people are, I'll be honest. But the thing is, it's quite, like, these days, that's quite an offensive thing. It's risky to say that.
Do you reckon?
A little bit.
It's not because she's black. I'm assuming she's black from the name, which is racist of me. But
well, that's racist. That's more offensive.
It's anything not racist these days. But yeah, if this was a white person saying, oh, I can't understand what this Nigerian person was saying, then everybody, all the Dr. Shola Moss Shogba Mimus would be out being like, this is why I resist the caucasity. This is unacceptable. And
is that not happening here?
Adulate ourselves. No, it's not. Everybody's just like, yeah, fair enough. You can't understand people from the north. They sound weird.
But to be fair, it is difficult sometimes with some accents. I struggle with some, more broad Geordie accents or Scouser accents. Not because I dislike people from Liverpool or Newcastle.
Yeah.
They're lovely on the whole. But it is tricky, isn't it?
Yeah. I quite like the fact that one of my first long-term partners was from Essex, my dad obviously from Mansfield, where I'm from. They couldn't speak to each other because my dad was going deaf and my partner was quite quiet.
Yes.
And Dad's accent was just so thick she couldn't understand it, so I had to translate. And it felt like being bilingual for a while. Like, it's tongue code, hasn't it? Oh, he's saying it's turned cold, hasn't it? It was really...
And the reverse must be true. I mean, there must be people with broad Scottish accents who struggle with some English accents, right?
Yeah. I mean, the thing about Britain is you go 20 miles down the road, people talk completely differently.
Exactly.
It's mad.
So I don't think we should get outraged by this.
No, we shouldn't. But then people shouldn't get outraged when, say, for example, somebody goes to Buckingham Palace, dressed like Fred Flintstone, and somebody's like, where are you from? It's not, it's not an evil colonialist racist attack.
No, of course. It's people inquiring about difference.
Yeah.
And that should be, fine, basically. Anyway, let's move on. Old MacDonald had a farm, and on that farm he had a bunch of octopi that had the reasoning ability of a 4-year-old, and then he decided to eat them.
Yeah, so animal rights activists have condemned a cruel plan for the world's first octopus farm. I don't know what makes this particularly cruel, as opposed to like all farms, you're killing, pigs or cows or lettuces.
It's because pigs, cows and lettuces don't have sentience. Self-consciousness,
Pigs do.
No, they don't.
Well, more than an octopus.
No, that's not true. No, octopi, that's wrong, actually. But octopuses are sentient. They can experience happiness and depression. They're like just having...
People say this, but how do you know? How do you know if an octopus is experiencing depression? It's an octopus.
Because they cry and sit in a corner.
It's got a beak. No, this is the problem is there was this Netflix documentary during lockdown, so everybody watched it because there was nothing else to do, and it was called My Octopus Teacher, and it was about this guy who made friends with an octopus and went and swam with it. But what it really was he was going through a difficult divorce or something, so
the octopus
projected all his feelings onto this squid.
No. Steve, you know a lot about science and things. Yeah. So you can tell us, is it true that an octopus is more sentient than, say, a cow?
Definitely more than a lettuce. I agree with you on that one.
Yeah.
I think on, cow, they're certainly more intelligent.
Yes.
Sentience is a really difficult thing to try and measure, but more intelligent than a pig. Pigs are really clever, but octopus, they are amazing. There's a lovely story of a research laboratory, I think it was in America, and they had these octopuses, octopodes, in a tank. Every morning they'd go in and the lights had fused. And they're like, what's going on here? And it turns out one of the octopuses, podes, had realised it's a bit light overnight, so it would squirt water to the light switch to fuse it. That's clever. I mean,
squirting water on electrical devices is not clever. That's a very dangerous thing. There could be children.
It was fine for it because it was in a self-contained. It was for the humans. It nearly killed them.
I think you can tell when creatures have a particularly high level of intelligence. Have you seen the film Alien Resurrection, where there are 3 aliens in a prison and the 2 decide to destroy the other one, so the acid for blood gives them a way out? Yeah. Then you know the aliens are intelligent. Yeah. In this case, with an octopus, all of the studies, I mean, they haven't done anything as smart as that, but we can tell that they're pretty much up there. They're like a moderately intelligent child.
Why don't they try taking over then? And we'll see who comes out on top.
Maybe they'll win, and maybe
because they can't breathe up here.
They only live for a year. They can come out of the water. We can go in the water. That's how much we totally dominate octopus.
OK, look, this article says that they're going to put 10 to 15 octopuses in this farm within a cubic square metre. That's got to be cruel, Leo. You can't justify that.
Chickens. We do it with chickens.
Chickens aren't sentient.
We do it with call centre workers. I mean, this is... How come it's...
Chickens... They're not sentient. Call centre workers are not sentient. I've been on the phone with them.
Right, let's move on to this one. This is the Telegraph still. The BBC are having arrangements for their stars. What are these arrangements, Leo? What's going on?
So this is following on from Gary Lineker getting in trouble for tweeting his political opinions about the government's migration policy. So the BBC's had to reveal its specific arrangements with stars that allows them to express political opinions. And it comes down to the stars being identified with the BBC. So they give the example of Alan Sugar, or Sir Alan, whatever is the proper term.
Isn't he a lord?
I think he's a sir.
A lord and a sir,
I think he's an actual sir. Lord Sugar, Sir Alan, he isn't tweeting much at the moment. Because the Apprentice is on, so he'll be associated with the BBC.
So when the Apprentice is not on, Alan Sugar will be able to say whatever he wants on
whatever
Twitter.
He wants,
OK, well, that seems reasonable, doesn't it?
Yeah, it seems reasonable. I mean, the thing with Gary Lineker is, apparently he had a special agreement with Tim David, the BBC's Director General.
Yes.
But Gary Lineker is on the BBC all the time. He's on every Saturday.
Yes.
So for him to tweet at any point, especially with something so hypocritical and so virtue signalling and so cloyingly sort of... just so unctuous the way he's demanding that.
He is annoying on Twitter, I'll grant you that.
Yeah.
But wouldn't a more sensible solution here, Steve, be if the BBC just had a broader, diverse range of presenters who had lots and lots of different types of opinions and say, you can say whatever you want, and then no one could possibly complain?
Then the same rule would have to be in place, that you can say whatever you want, and it would still be that the people who say things that certain demographics agree with wouldn't get mentioned, but you notice that Gary Lineker does it, and then you get upset.
But isn't the problem here that the fact that we notice it is because the BBC largely, by and large, 99% of the people who present at the BBC all think exactly the same way?
Well, so Andrew Neil was mentioned loads when this story first broke by all of his pro-Brexit commentary on Twitter was not complained about, and it probably was complained about by some left-wing types who didn't manage to get as much newspaper coverage as right-wing types not liking Gary Lineker. The point is, people will say things that you don't like. I had no problem with Andrew Neil tweeting whatever. I've got no problem because I don't read them.
But they got no representation on the BBC. I mean, in fact, they did a study of comedians on the BBC, and of all the comedians who have a sort of open political outlook, 98% of them were left-leaning, and 2% were Jeff Norcott.
But the solution can't be to stop Gary Lineker tweeting. I think if you don't work in news, fair game, go for it, because it doesn't make me think anything about... Just because you earn a bit of your living, a massive amount of your living, from the licence fee, doesn't mean we own you 24/7.
Well, this is the thing, though. His political tweeting was also used in court. He was being chased by HMRC for tax, for nearly £5 million of unpaid tax. And his excuse was, oh, but look, I'm freelance because I don't abide by the BBC rules. Here's me tweeting all this political nonsense. So he's not even doing it to help anybody. He's doing it to bring his tax bill down, so he doesn't need to pay towards the hotels that the refugees are
My instinct would be that the BBC should just let anyone tweet the way they do. But the fact that they don't means that I don't think this is a free speech issue. If he's broken his contract, he's broken his contract. That's a different thing, isn't it? I would have thought.
Yeah, I mean, they're more guidelines, aren't they? I don't think it's specifically... It might be for him, but when I worked at the BBC, there was nothing in my contract about tweeting, but I did have to have a meeting once about a joke I did about Trump.
Did you really?
Yeah. My argument was he's not our leader. In the same way, if I did a joke about Kim Jong-un, no one would pull me in about bias.
Maybe they would.
Yeah.
Maybe they would.
No, I did plenty of Kim Jong-un ones.
OK, well, let's move on to this story about a missing radioactive cylinder from the Star. That doesn't sound good, Steve.
Yeah, in Thailand, they're missing the cesium-137. Looks at the note. Yeah, 137. And, I mean, this is hot on the heels of the one in Australia.
Now, we talked about that on this show. Someone lost a little radioactive pebble or something on this big, long road in Australia. Couldn't find it. There's like 800 miles. So actually, the risk of, it causing death is pretty low anyway, just because it's so massive. But this is different. This is right next to a city of 14 million.
Yep.
So this actually does matter.
This really does matter. What's happened to us as well? Why are we not paying attention to radioactive stuff? There used to be a nice little label on the side of it.
Yes.
The radioactive thing.
Why are people just willy-nilly just dropping them at the side of the road? Like, oh, I've lost that.
Yeah.
Also, people are making them too small. They used to be, if you look at Chernobyl and stuff, the rods were huge. You're not going to lose one. Now they're making them the same size as like a 12-bore shotgun cartridge, and it's like, well, obviously somebody's going to lose that. It's tiny.
Yeah. This is the lesson of this, is like when it comes to radioactive materials, just be a bit careful with that stuff.
Make it big.
Make it big.
The good news is that cesium-137 decays through beta particles, and that ionises the air about 30 centimetres. If you're 30 centimetres away from it, it's not going to touch you.
Yeah, but what if you pick it up? What if a child says, what's that shiny thing, and picks it up and swallows it?
Don't go picking stuff up, because people are losing radioactive particles left, right, and centre.
Clearly they are. I didn't know that, but apparently they're being very, very sloppy. Right, we're going to move on now. We've got a break. Time for a quick break. And after we've touched up our makeup, Leo is going to be regaling us with his best dad jokes. And we're going to be talking about why cocaine consumption is at record levels. And I'll be discovering whether I can take Leo to court for cuddling me before the show. See you in a minute.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB+ radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bite.
Always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway,
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
And welcome back to Headliners, your first look at Friday's newspapers. We're going to kick off this section with this one from the Mail about dad jokes. Also, apparently, you shouldn't use beef stew as a password. It's not Stroganoff. Stroganoff. No?
Yeah. Professional comedian, Andrew Doyle.
Yeah, but that's not the sort of jokes I do, Leo. I do whimsical anecdotes.
Oh, really? Well, unfortunately for me, I was UK pun champion.
You were?
In 2015.
So how would you have said that?
Before I was radicalised into far-right politics.
So how would you have delivered the beef stew joke?
I don't know.
No, because it's not good enough, is it?
I can't do it now. But yeah, apparently dad jokes are good for us, or good for some people, good for kids, because they toughen up. The kids, because they survive the embarrassment of their dad making a terrible pun and realise the embarrassment is not that bad. And I used to do a whole hour of these jokes. I love puns. In fact, I was walking down the street outside, I saw a sign that said watch batteries sold here. So I went in and watched.
Now, Steve, puns aren't your thing, are they?
No, not really.
You wouldn't win Punster of the Year.
No, I mean, I certainly don't do any puns about beef, because as a joke, it wouldn't be Stroganoff.
There we go. That's the way to do it.
Is it? No, I've never. I mean, I enjoy a pun every so often, but I don't do them in my set. Now that I'm a dad, I have been trying to do dad jokes, but he's not getting them. He's a terrible audience, if anything.
Yeah.
And there's one that I do which makes my other half groan, because he's got a book that's got this bear, and then there's a colander on a bear's head. And I always say to my little lad, I don't know if that's a colander or a calendar. I get confused because they can both contain dates. And he doesn't quite get that joke yet, but every single time my missus hates me a little bit more. So I'm not sure this research, I mean, maybe it means the kids get stronger, but
what they're saying is that the kids become more resilient because they're so used to their dads really embarrassing them.
I saw my kid with a colander on her head, and it was really big. I said, that's massive.
I mean, did you just come up with that on the spot?
I just came up with that right now.
Because that's what you can do. You can just come up with puns in any situation.
Yeah. Marvin Gaye used to keep a sheep in my vineyard. He'd heard it through the grapevine.
This is his superpower. Yeah. That's Leo's superpower.
I saw the Israeli Prime Minister the other day. He said, Leo, you can't email me. I'm not on Hotmail. I said, Ben, do you mean not on Yahoo?
OK, moving on, because it is quite embarrassing. I think that article's got it spot on. What about this article from Friday's Mail, Nick? Sorry, I mean Steve.
Wow, that's never happened before. I'm not sure what Freudian thing just happened there. This is about a dating app. Someone's made a dating app, and then they said, I'll tell you what the problem is. It's the whinging, easily offended feminists that have ruined romance. That, I imagine, probably upsets them. Even if they weren't easily offended, you've managed it. So it's this person called Denny Smith who wanted to create an app to try and help her daughter find someone.
Yes.
I mean, that's desperate. It would just call the app desperation.
Has she not heard of Tinder? I mean, there are already
they already
well-known
exist.
apps.
Yeah, it's a bit creepy, actually, in a way, isn't it?
Make a specific app for this one person.
Yeah, it's like your parents setting up a blind date and giving you tips on...
Yeah, never mind TikTok harvesting your personal data. This app's definitely going to be harvesting our data and sending it to our mum.
But what do they mean, Steve? This article's talking about how whinging feminists are making things worse. Is it because they don't like chivalry? Is that what's
That's the take on this, saying that
they don't like anything.
Someone who, if you hold a door open for someone and they could be offended because it's patronising. But I think that's good data collection. You know, if you hold a door open for someone and they are offended, walk out the door and never see that person again. It's better to find out quickly rather than through the course of getting married.
I love it when people hold doors open to me and buy my meals and get me flowers. I think it's lovely.
Does that happen often?
Never. But I think it'd be great, and I don't think it would be offensive as a woman for that to happen. But I speak on behalf of women, obviously. But what?
Also, you can't win if you don't do it. Like so many women we see on what's that thing? First dates. And so many women, you see it popping up on Twitter and stuff. They'll say, "I went on a date with this man, and he said we had to go Dutch." And it's like, yeah, it's 2023. It's like, you know, we can go Dutch because there's no gender pay gap anymore.
But is this a bit of a myth? I mean, you know, we hear this about feminists, that they get annoyed if you hold the door open. I don't think it actually happens, does it? I've never met a feminist who I think will get annoyed if you open a door.
Depends what you do with your other hand as they walk through, I think.
Well, OK, but that would be reasonable, a reasonable complaint. But just being nice to someone, I don't think is necessarily a problem.
No, yeah, you're right. This is not a thing that actually exists, and yet somehow this person created an app to try and get her daughter someone who does hold doors open.
What I find odd about this article is that this woman who created the app, she said, in this country we've got it good, I just don't get it. We've had 2 female prime ministers. No, we haven't.
3.
We've had 3. So if anyone's anti-feminist, Liz Truss does count. And the fact that you don't think she does is indicative of the misogyny.
It's not misogyny, it's maths. You've got stuff in the fridge that lasts longer than she did.
Do you think Kwasi Kwarteng doesn't count as a chancellor?
Yeah, I mean, that was, what, 3 days or something?
How long do you have to be in power for it to count?
Enough for the business cards to arrive.
Okay.
And there's no way Liz Truss Prime Minister had actually got printed.
OK, well, there we go. Poor old Liz. OK, the Mail again, and at least one industry is thriving in this bleak economic reality, apparently. Leo.
So global cocaine production is surging after a slump during lockdown. So during lockdown...
Good for them.
During lockdown, everybody was stuck inside, so apparently psychedelics and marijuana were increasing. Everybody wanted to do them. You don't want to be, you know, off your nut on cocaine, just locked in your house.
Yeah.
But now that, you know, everybody's back in the nightclubs and whatever else young people go to, cocaine production has surged by 35%. It's at record levels.
Okay.
Apparently, and there's calls for it to be legalised in America and some Western.
Well, if the business is doing well, then legalising it would mean we'd get the revenue, we'd get the tax.
And yeah, so many people are using it. Also, it funds criminal gangs.
Yeah, but the thing is, if you make it legal, then the criminal gangs become obsolete and they disappear.
Exactly. That's why we should. That's why we should. Or we either do that or just really clamp down on it. Maybe fly to Colombia and just every 10th coca plant put some anthrax in it.
Right. What do you think, Steve? These are very militant suggestions that we're coming up with. Do you have it in a more moderate way?
Well, I mean, I'm not really in favour of doing cocaine, but that's because I don't really like extroverts.
Yes.
It's the drug that turns even introverts into extroverts. But at least we have the decency to feel bad about it the day after. This seems like a terrible story, doesn't it?
It actually is a really awful story, yeah.
I mean, the way it's phrased is like, well, they're doing really well. They've achieved something, like they've gone on Dragon's Den.
Yeah, like the headline is like, demand surges. It's like, yes, come on. We shouldn't be cheering these people on, should we?
There are very few British success stories. So maybe our county lines gangs... is something we can
This is not a good story. OK, well, look, we've got to move on to this one. Now, this one is an odd one. It's about hugging, Steve. And it is difficult, isn't it? Because some people are more tactile than others. What's the story saying?
No, it's not difficult. The story is saying, should you hug work colleagues? The answer's no. There we go.
Is that it?
That's not their answer. It's my answer.
There we are.
That's my happy place.
This is the Metro, this story. The thing is, though, Steve, what I should say is that, you know, if you've ever worked in the theatre, you try and put a clamp down on hugs and you will never get cast again. Because you have to hug after every little triumph.
Yeah.
Someone delivers a line well, they get a hug. You know, someone arrives on time, they get stroked.
Working what?
Well, stuff like that.
Maybe I should work there. What? No, I've worked in media, and like someone you've met once before thinks it's time to hug and kiss. Get back off.
And you never know how many kisses either.
Yeah.
People going for like one. You don't know. Are they going for 2? Are we doing 4?
No, I used to have an
people...
agent who insisted on 3.
Right.
Yeah, you know, and
It's even worse.
Trying to guess that number. And I look like an idiot.
As an introvert, I don't really like too much of this. This is why I spend a lot of my time online teaching introvert self-defence.
Yes.
When someone comes in for a hug, punch the throat, and then present your hand for a shake.
And that should be allowed in the workplace.
Oh, definitely. If they're hugging, you're punching.
I mean, this is... But this article actually cites this case in the UK of a woman who received a payout, actually got money because she sued because someone at work hugged her from behind without consent.
Yeah, that's dodgy.
But it happened tonight. I saw it happen earlier. One of the producers hugged someone else.
Well, they were choking. We should report it.
But it was a sweet... It was like, how you doing?
I think if you know the person, then it's fine. But because all these... I remember a few years ago, all these female comedians were posting saying like, these male comedians coming and hugging me. So then I was like very careful not to... But then sometimes they come in for the hug anyway, and then you got to like stand and try and hug them like some sort of autistic Japanese robot, trying not to put your hands anywhere that could be construed as a sex crime.
You see, I would have thought that since the pandemic, the hugs would have gone out because we weren't even shaking hands. We were doing that weird elbow thing.
Yeah.
But the hugs are back, as far as I can see. But lots of people trying to hug me.
Yeah.
And I think that's... Maybe it's just you got to think. It's
I'm just lovable.
magnetism.
I have some kind of magnetism. Yeah.
I think we should keep the elbow thing, because I never like shaking hands. Why would I want to rub the part of my body that I prepare sandwiches with against the part of your body that... I don't know what you get up to with that.
And also, it originally comes from showing that you don't have a weapon, but, you know, these days, people can carry the weapon in their other hand. They're clever.
They got
yeah.
No, interesting. OK, we're going to move on to this final story now that we've got. And this is to do with Generation Z, and this is about a hand gesture, Liam?
Yeah, so we're back to the hands. So Generation Z people claim that this hand gesture is way more offensive than the middle finger or the 2 victims.
What hand gesture?
It's the thumbs down.
The thumbs down?
Like in the Colosseum, like that.
Like Commodus?
Whoever.
The Emperor.
Yeah, the Emperor, the guy who invented toilets. But, so give them the thumbs down because it's used as a sign of dislike on social media.
So what does it mean? It's upsetting, or it's like violence or something?
This person, she was driving, I believe she was driving, and somebody gave her the thumbs down, and she started crying because it was worse than getting flipped off.
But I sometimes send the thumbs down emoji when I don't want something. Is that really an aggressive thing now? Should I stop doing that? Could I be sued for that?
To that generation, definitely. It was about 2 years ago, there was a story that Gen Z find full stops to be offensive.
What?
I'm not even kidding, which means you have to end every sentence is a question, otherwise they'll cry.
I was told when I was a teacher that I shouldn't mark in red or write comments in red because they saw it as threatening. I mean, I was writing in blood, to be fair, so it was a bit aggressive.
And it was saying, I will find you.
It was
Other than that.
Well, you've got to be strict when people are making spelling errors. That's the only way that people are going to learn, aren't they? Anyway, that is the end of the show. It's all we've got time for, unfortunately. But let's have a quick look once more at Friday's front pages. So the Daily Mail are leading with this story. Beyond parody, apparently Oxfam's new inclusivity guide has banned phrases such as mother, father and headquarters. The Guardian is leading with excoriating report, condemns Met Police over racist, sexist culture. The Telegraph is leading with Labour's pension tax rate plan will hit millions. The Times has got unions back fair raise for 1 million NHS staff. And the Daily Star... This is the story we covered earlier, Generation Z. It's sleepy time. Apparently, young people like to nap and they're a bit lazy. That's a huge revelation there. Thanks for watching our show tonight. Thank you, of course, to my wonderful guests, Leo Kearse and Steve Allen. I'm going to be back with Headliners tomorrow at 11 o'clock with Dapper Laughs and Jonathan Cogan. And if you're watching the 5 a.m. repeat, stick around for The Breakfast Show, which is just after the break.
Monday to